The morning I vanished, the bacon was still sizzling on the stove. The smell of maple and burnt fat lingered in the kitchen while her phone buzzed again, face down, screen glowing through the cracks of its chipped case. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it said. 3 days before, I'd heard it. A name I was never supposed to hear her say that way. Grady. She whispered it at night in her sleep. Not once, twice. And both times I didn't breathe. She never said my name like that. Not even in the beginning. I stayed quiet. Waited. Observed. Let it build. She didn't know I saw the hotel keycard in her purse. Or that I took a photo of it. Or that I followed her there 2 nights later in a rented sedan with out-of-state plates. She thought I was chaperoning a school trip to Harrisburg. I was in the parking lot of a highway motel watching my wife exit a car with a man in a tan trench coat and a shaved head. He kissed her neck before they disappeared into room 209. I didn't yell. I didn't knock. I didn't confront her. Instead, I went home, made breakfast the next morning like nothing happened, set the pan to low, and left. No note. No goodbye. Just the bacon still frying when she walked in. I left my phone in the sink. By the time she called the police, I was 2 states away with a prepaid phone, no bank cards, and a name that wasn't mine. I didn't care where I was going. Only that she'd never find me. But I was wrong. A year later, she did. And what she told me then, what she showed me changed everything I thought I knew about betrayal. And myself. For the first 2 weeks, I slept in the back of a rusted-out Ford Ranger I bought for $800 in cash. No plates, no paperwork. The guy who sold it didn't even ask my name. Said something like, "You running from something or running to it?" I just gave a crooked smile and didn't answer. Maybe I didn't know the answer myself. I found a small mountain town in West Virginia called Millgrove. Population? Maybe 500. It had a gas station, a post office, and a diner that only played gospel on Sundays. The kind of place no one asked questions, and if they did, they didn't care about the answer. I started washing dishes at the diner after hours just to keep gas in the truck and food in my gut. The manager, Dwayne, let me sleep in the attic above the kitchen if I kept the floors spotless and didn't complain about the mice. I didn't tell anyone who I was. I started calling myself Neil. It was the first name that popped into my head the morning I arrived. It was the name of the only kid in high school who ever beat me in a piano competition. It felt fitting somehow being someone who outplayed me. Back home, Lorelai must have been panicking. I imagined the calls, the missing person report, the worried look she'd put on in front of her coworkers. But I also imagined Grady, whoever he was, slipping into our bed while the pillow on my side was still warm. The worst part was, I didn't hate her. That was the part one couldn't say out loud. I didn't hate her. I hated that I missed her. I hated that I still heard her laugh when I closed my eyes. I hated that part of me wanted to believe she'd made a mistake. That she'd come to her senses. That she'd... No. I buried that thought. One night, about 7 months into my disappearance, Dwayne came up the creaky attic stairs holding a letter. "This came for you," he said, eyes narrowed. Addressed to Neil. No return address. Hand-delivered. Left in the mailbox. I took the envelope with shaking fingers. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Lorelai's. I opened it with a kitchen knife, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd throw up. There was no letter inside, just a photograph. It was the 2 of us on our 3rd anniversary in the Smoky Mountains. She was smiling. I was holding a sparkler. On the back, in pencil, she'd written, "Please let me explain." That was it. No number. No address. No plea. Just a picture and a sentence. Somehow, that was worse than 1,000 pages of apologies. Because it meant she wasn't finished. She was still searching. Still trying. I didn't sleep that night. And the next morning, a car I didn't recognize rolled into town and parked across from the diner. A woman stepped out in a long coat. I couldn't see her face, but something in my gut twisted hard. She had found me, and I wasn't ready for what came next. At first, I thought I was imagining her. The sunlight was angled through the glass in a way that made her face hard to see, like the town itself didn't want to give her away just yet. She stood next to the diner's window, unmoving. Not searching. Not knocking. Just waiting. Wrapped in a wool coat that looked expensive but weathered, with her hair tied back in a way that made her look like someone trying to remember who she used to be. I ducked down behind the prep station, breathing shallow. My hands shook as I held a dish rag like it was going to save me from her. I hadn't said her name out loud in 10 months. Not even to myself. But there she was. Lorelai. I couldn't believe she found me. I'd changed everything, name, address, phone. I hadn't touched a credit card or email account since the day I left. No forwarding address. No message to family. And yet somehow she had followed the cracks I left behind. She didn't ask the waitress anything. She didn't approach the counter. She just stood there for what felt like a full hour, hands buried in her coat pockets, staring at the coffee mugs displayed on the shelf behind the window. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away. I didn't move until Dwayne came back into the kitchen. He raised an eyebrow at me. "You all right, man? You look like you saw a ghost." I wanted to laugh. A ghost would have been easier. Over the next 3 days, she came back twice. Each time she just stood there. Never entered. Never spoke. Just watched, like she was waiting for some invisible door to open on its own. And something about that terrified me more than if she had banged on the glass screaming. On the 4th morning, I woke to find a folded piece of paper slid under the door to the attic. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't even signed. It was a list. A list of places only we would know. The trailhead where she told me she loved me. The coffee shop where she said yes. The bench where we sat the night we lost the baby. The motel where I saw her with him. Room 209. Underneath, she wrote. "I remember all of it. I need you to know what happened. Please meet me. Just once." I stared at it for an hour. Then 2. Then I did the dumbest thing I could have done. I showed up. She was already there, sitting at the edge of the trailhead with a cup of gas station coffee and circles under her eyes so deep I almost didn't recognize her. I didn't say hello. I didn't even sit down. She looked up at me with eyes full of something worse than guilt. She whispered, "Bennett, you never knew the whole story." And then she told me something that shattered everything I thought I'd figured out. A truth so twisted and cruel that I had to sit down before I collapsed. What she confessed next made me realize that the affair was just the beginning. I sat down slowly, feeling the dampness of the log beneath me, the same one we used to rest on after hikes. A fog hung low over the woods, blurring the horizon like the past year had blurred the boundaries of who I thought I was. Lorelei sat quietly beside me, holding the cup of coffee like it anchored her to the ground. She didn't start with an apology. She didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead and said, "Grady wasn't who you think he was." I flinched at the name. I hadn't said it, not once, not out loud. I'd buried it deep in the hole where our marriage used to be. And now here she was, dragging it into the light without flinching. "He wasn't someone I met at work," she said slowly. He's my half-brother." I blinked. Thought I misheard. "What?" She nodded. "We have the same father." I didn't know until last year. Until he showed up out of nowhere and introduced himself. My stomach flipped. "That's the man you slept with." She closed her eyes for a moment, not out of guilt, but pain. "No. I never slept with him." The silence between us howled. "You think you saw what you saw," she went on, "but that night at the motel you didn't stay, did you?" I shook my head. I knew someone was watching us. I didn't know it was you, but I felt it. And I panicked. I knew how it looked. "Then explain it," I said, voice raw. "Because the way he held you, the way you leaned into him. He's dying, Bennett." My mouth went dry. She took a long breath, her fingers trembling around the paper coffee cup. "Stage 4 cancer. He reached out because he wanted to meet someone, anyone related to him before it was too late. I didn't tell you because I didn't know how. It was all so sudden. He asked to meet in private. He said he didn't want to scare me off with hospital rooms or doctors. So I agreed to meet him at a motel off the interstate. Just to talk. Why not just say that? Because I was scared. I thought maybe it was a scam. Maybe he was unstable. And then when I got there, he hugged me. Just once. And I think maybe that's what you saw." My mind was spinning, tumbling over itself, looking for something solid to grab onto. "I sent the photo," she whispered, "because I wanted you to remember who I was before everything got complicated. Before secrets started building walls between us." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My thoughts were dragging me in 10 directions, some toward forgiveness, others toward deeper suspicion. I kept seeing that kiss. That neck. That room. What if she was lying? What if this was just the softer version of the truth? And then she said something that pierced through everything. "You didn't disappear because I hurt you. You disappeared because you never believed I could be innocent." She stood, brushed the dirt off her coat, and placed something on the log beside me. A folder. Inside were medical records. Photos. DNA test results. Her handwriting scribbled in the margins of letters I hadn't known she'd written over the past year. Sealed envelopes never sent. Pages torn out and rewritten again and again. "I'm not asking you to come back," she said softly. "I'm asking you to know the truth. That's all." Then she turned and walked away, leaving me with more answers than I knew how to hold. But that wasn't the end. That night, I opened one of the sealed envelopes in the folder. Inside was a recording. A conversation. And in it, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in a year, one that shouldn't have known where I was. One that made my skin crawl. Grady. And what he said in that recording proved Lorelei was hiding more than just the past. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. I held it for a while before opening it, like some part of me was afraid that whatever was inside would pull me into something I couldn't climb back out of. But curiosity, no, not curiosity, something more desperate than that one. It wasn't a letter. It was a USB drive. Small, black, no label. Just taped to a folded sheet of lined paper. On that sheet was one sentence. He lied to both of us. I stared at it, heart thudding like it wanted to break its way out of my chest. I didn't have a laptop anymore, hadn't touched anything digital in almost a year. But the town library had a public computer lab. I'd never once set foot in it, always worried someone would recognize me, somehow trace my digital fingerprints back to a life I had abandoned. But now, I didn't care. I waited until sunset, pulled a hoodie over my head, and walked 3 blocks in silence. The lab was nearly empty, just a teenager playing some online game and an old man flipping through spreadsheets like they were crossword puzzles. I picked a seat at the very end, facing the wall, and plugged the drive in. The file was labeled play_this.mp3. I clicked. The sound was rough at first, crackling like it had been recorded through a cheap mic or a phone hidden in a jacket pocket. But then the voices came through clear enough to make my hands freeze on the keyboard. It was Grady. No doubt about it. And the first thing he said was, "He thinks you're still innocent. You should tell him the truth before someone else does." My throat tightened. I looked around. No one noticed. I kept listening. Lorelei's voice came next, quiet, almost broken. "I don't even know what the truth is anymore." "You do," Grady said, calm but firm. "You know why he left. You know what you let happen. You let him think it was just me. But you and I both know he was never supposed to find out about the other man." "Other man?" The air around me dropped 10 degrees. I backed away from the screen like it might bite me. Grady kept speaking. "You told me it ended. You swore you ended it before your anniversary." Lorelei didn't answer right away. Then she muttered something that was barely above a whisper. "It did end. But only because he ended it first." Grady's laugh was bitter. "So you're saying you weren't still messaging him last summer?" Silence. Then Lorelei spoke again, her voice cracking. "I don't know what I wanted. I just know Bennett didn't deserve any of it. That was it." The file ended there. I sat frozen, staring at the screen as if the file might start playing again, offering more. But it didn't. It didn't need to. I had heard enough. The man at the motel, the one I thought was Grady, the one I followed? He was Grady. But he wasn't the only one. There had been someone else. Someone I hadn't even known about. A second betrayal. A deeper one. One she never admitted to my face. My vision blurred as I left the library. I felt dizzy. Betrayal was a strange thing. It didn't just hurt. It warped reality. It made you question whether anything in your memory had been real. The way she looked at me the night we danced in the rain, barefoot on the deck. The way she held my hand when I got the job offer in Baltimore and said she'd follow me anywhere. The way she kissed me after I fixed up the old piano she used to play as a girl. Were those moments real? Or had she already been looking for exits? I went back to the attic and opened the rest of the envelopes she'd left. One of them contained a printed screenshot of an old message thread between her and someone named Jonas. I didn't recognize the name, but the things she said to him. I recognized that version of her. Careless. Cruel. Desperate to escape. And in one message dated 5 days before I disappeared, she wrote, "I'm so close to leaving. Just say the word." She didn't leave me because I ran. She was planning to leave first. And I just made it easier. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the attic floor with every window shut tight, all the envelopes around me like fallen leaves. The air felt thick, like I was breathing through wet cotton. The words on the page blurred and twisted the longer I stared. I kept reading that one line over and over, "I'm so close to leaving. Just say the word." And I started to realize I had never actually left her. I had only beat her to it. All those months I'd spent convincing myself I was the wounded one, the one betrayed. I was, yes. But I wasn't the only one left shattered. I was a ghost she hadn't even planned to haunt. And worse, she hadn't chased me out of love. She chased me out of guilt. Guilt for not telling me that her heart had already packed its bags before I vanished. I tried to make sense of it all, to align timelines, to figure out when Jonas came into the picture, before or after Grady. But nothing fit. There were messages without dates, photos without context. Some were cropped. Some were printed out but torn at the edges, like she couldn't bear to show the full truth. A few messages referenced meetings I couldn't verify. Cities I didn't even know she'd visited. Names I didn't recognize. I had spent a year trying to disappear from the world, and she had spent it trying to rewrite our past. I walked through Millgrove in a daze the next morning. Fog rolled across the road in thick waves, swallowing houses and telephone poles as I passed. It felt fitting. Like the town itself wanted to keep its secrets hidden as much as I did. I didn't go to work. I didn't call Dwayne. I just walked past the creek, the burned-out barn, the wooden fence that had been broken since the day I arrived. And there she was again. Lorelei. Sitting on the hood of her rental car just like the first time, except this time she wasn't watching. She was crying. Not dramatic sobbing. Not a performance. She was quiet, holding a photo in her lap like it was the only thing keeping her rooted to the earth. I don't know why, but I approached her. "You didn't tell me about Jonas," I said. She didn't look up. "I thought I buried him with everything else." "Then why did you keep the messages?" "I didn't," she whispered. "They were sent to me." I froze. "By who?" She finally looked up, her eyes bloodshot. "By him. A few weeks ago. Out of nowhere. He said if I didn't tell you the truth, he would." I clenched my jaw. "So he's still out there? He's not what you think?" "No? Because I think he's the guy you were about to run off with before I ran off first." She shook her head slowly. "He's not trying to win me back. He's trying to ruin me. He told me you'd find out eventually. That secrets never stay buried. And then he sent this." She handed me the photo. At first, I thought it was nothing. Just two people sitting in a hotel bar, side by side. The man had dark hair, a beard, a leather jacket. Lorelei had her back to the camera, but it was definitely her. What caught my attention was the date printed in the corner. It was the night before our anniversary. The night I thought she was home with her sister in Boston. "I lied," she said flatly. "I wasn't with Emily. I went to see him. I told him it was over." "And you sat at a hotel bar?" "For 10 minutes. Then I left. I haven't spoken to him since." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But all the pieces were too sharp, too scattered. I didn't know what to believe anymore. It wasn't just a broken marriage. It was a collapsing timeline. Everything I remembered had a shadow underneath it now. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "I've been followed, Bennett." "What?" "Not just once. Since I started looking for you. Notes on my car. Pictures mailed to my office. Photos of you too." That's when it hit me how she found me. How she knew I was in Millgrove. She hadn't tracked me down. He had. Jonas. And he had been watching both of us. We sat in silence, the fog curling around the car like it wanted to seal us inside. I stared at the photo in my hand, heart pounding louder than the crickets in the trees. The man in the picture looked average, forgettable even, but something about him unnerved me, maybe because he wasn't trying to hide. He was looking directly into the camera. Smirking. "You think Jonas has been following you?" I asked carefully. She nodded. "I know it. I didn't want to believe it at first. But I started noticing patterns. Same car. Same guy at the grocery store. A man in a blue raincoat outside my building 3 times in 1 week. And then this." She reached into her glove box and pulled out a crumpled envelope. No return address. Inside were more photos. This time they were of me at the diner, walking near the creek, leaning against the hood of my truck smoking a cigarette I didn't even remember lighting. My stomach dropped. "They were mailed to me," she whispered. "A week before I came here." The message was clear. He wanted me to know that if I didn't tell you everything, he would. I flipped through the images again, a cold sweat settling over my skin. Whoever took them had to be close. Watching. Waiting. Why would he do this? I asked. What does he want? I think he wanted me to run away with him. And when I didn't, it became about control. About ruining what was left. My mind reeled, scrambling to piece together this new version of the truth. For months I thought Lorelei had betrayed me in the most unforgivable way. Then I believed she might have only told part of the story. And now I was being told that someone else had been pulling strings in the background, someone who knew how to stay hidden, how to manipulate, how to wait. That night, I didn't go back to the attic. I stayed in my truck with the engine off, parked just outside the tree line, watching the road in case another vehicle passed through. Every time a pair of headlights flickered in the distance, I ducked lower. Every creak of a tree branch made me twitch. It wasn't just paranoia. It was something deeper, older, like a prehistoric instinct finally waking up inside me. I had never felt truly hunted before. At sunrise, I drove into town and found Lorelei sitting alone in the diner. She looked like she hadn't slept either. She pushed a cup of coffee across the table toward me without a word. "We need to find out who he is," I said. "Who Jonas really is. Where he lives. What he wants. She nodded slowly. There's one person who might know. Who? She hesitated, then said, my sister. My stomach turned. Emily? She introduced us. Years ago. Long before he and I ever talked. She dated him. Briefly. But something happened between them and she never told me what. All I know is she warned me years later to stay away. But I didn't listen. Of course. Of course it started earlier than I thought. The rot didn't begin with that motel keycard or the whispered name in her sleep. It started years ago beneath the surface with tangled connections and ignored warnings. I stared into my coffee. Do you think your sister will talk to us? She hates me, Lorelai said flatly. But she hates him more. So that afternoon, we drove 4 hours north to the sleepy lake town where Emily lived with her husband and 2 daughters. I hadn't seen her since Christmas 2 years earlier, before everything fractured, before the silence grew louder than the conversations. Emily opened the door, saw Lorelai, and slammed it in her face. But I knocked again. And this time, when she opened it, her expression changed, not out of forgiveness. Out of recognition. You're the one he's watching now, she said, eyes darting over my shoulder. I felt my skin go cold. He's been watching all of us. She stepped aside and let us in, then locked the door behind us with 2 deadbolts and a chain. And what she told us next rewrote everything we thought we knew, not just about Jonas, but about why I disappeared and what I unknowingly escaped. Emily poured tea like she was performing a ritual, silent, careful, deliberate. She didn't sit for a while. Just stood across from us, arms crossed, like she needed to remember who we were before she spoke. You were never supposed to see him, she finally said to Lorelai. I begged you to cut ties after that night. What night? I asked. Emily sighed. The night he followed me home. The room fell still. I dated Jonas for 4 months, she continued. He was charming, unpredictable. The kind of guy who made you feel like everything was an adventure. Until it wasn't. He would show up uninvited. New things I never told him. Once he made a joke about my bank pin. Another time he left a photo on my windshield of me picking up my kids from daycare. That's when I knew he wasn't flirting. He was watching. Lorelai buried her face in her hands. I told her, Emily said, voice harder now. I warned her. But she thought I was being dramatic. She thought he just needed someone to trust. That's what Jonas does, he finds cracks in people and crawls through them. I was shaking. Not out of fear anymore, but realization. Every unanswered question, every blurred line, every half-truth, it all came back to one man who knew how to vanish into plain sight. He followed me too, I said quietly. Emily nodded. He followed everyone he felt discarded by. We stayed the night in Emily's guest room. None of us really slept. In the morning, she handed me an old manila folder filled with printed emails, handwritten notes, even a restraining order she'd filed but never enforced. I copied everything, scanned what I could, then left a burner phone number at the local sheriff's office with the entire file. I told them I didn't need him arrested. I just needed him gone. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A detective out of state told me Jonas had been picked up loitering outside a children's camp he had no connection to. He was flagged in their system because of the file I'd submitted. He wasn't going to prison. But he was being watched now. Closely. Permanently. And just like that, the fog began to lift. For the first time in a year, I stepped back into my old life. Carefully, slowly, piece by piece. I didn't go back to teaching, but I found work restoring antique instruments. It was quiet work. Honest work. Work that let my hands remember how to feel steady again. Lorelai stayed in town. Not because I asked her to, but because I didn't ask her not to. We started meeting once a week. Not like a couple. Not like strangers either. Just 2 people who had been broken in separate ways by the same shadow. There were no promises. No apologies. Just presence. Sometimes that's enough. One Sunday, she brought a photograph to the diner. One I'd never seen. It was us on our 2nd wedding anniversary. Sitting on a patch of grass in front of a lake. Soaked from the rain but laughing like idiots. I couldn't even remember who took it. I found this in the attic, she said. I thought we lost it. I looked at it for a long time, then said the only thing I meant fully, completely. We haven't lost everything. She smiled. Not the smile of someone who won. Not the smile of someone who wanted something back. Just the smile of someone who, like me, finally knew that surviving something doesn't mean erasing it. It means carrying it differently. And sometimes, if you're lucky, carrying it together.